The summer sun hung high over the busy streets of London. A soft breeze rustled the trees lining the sidewalk, carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor nearby. The city hummed with life. Tourists snapping pictures, business people hurrying past, street performers drawing crowds. And then, in the middle of it all, there was her, Emily, a 16-year-old girl with deep brown eyes and a quiet resilience that shone through her every movement. She sat on a small foldable chair beside a makeshift stand, just a few crates and a wooden board serving as a display for her artwork. Her fingers were stained with charcoal and paint, the colors blending into one another like the stories hidden in her mind. She needed to sell these paintings, not for fame, not for fortune, for survival. Every brushstroke, every sketch, every piece of her soul that she put on those canvases had one purpose: to pay for the chemotherapy treatments keeping her alive. People passed by, some stopping for a moment to admire her work, some smiling, but most just continued walking. She fought back the ache of disappointment. Then something changed. A man stopped. Not just any man. Presence. Broad shoulders, a chiseled jawline, and an unmistakable intensity in his eyes. The way he moved, the way people reacted to him, it was clear this was no ordinary person. Jason Statham, the action star, the legend. Emily blinked. Was she imagining things? But no, he was real, standing right in front of her art stand, staring at her work with the sharp gaze that had made him famous in Hollywood. "You drew these?" His voice was low, rough, British. Emily nodded, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes." He picked up one of the smaller paintings. It was a sketch of an old man sitting alone on a park bench, his eyes lost in thought, the shadows on his face telling a lifetime of unspoken pain. "This is brilliant," he muttered, almost to himself. Then something unexpected happened. A man, tall, in a dark suit, rushed up to Jason, whispering something urgently in his ear. Jason frowned, set the painting down, and turned away. Emily's heart sank. Just another almost sale. Just another moment of false hope. She sighed and reached to put the painting back in place. But before she could, another voice cut through the air. "I'll take all of them." Emily's head snapped up. Jason Statham was back. Not only was he back, but he was pulling out a thick envelope. "Cash. A lot of it. Every single one," he repeated, locking eyes with her. "How much?" Emily stammered. I don't know. I usually sell them for." "Doesn't matter," he cut in. "Whatever they're worth, I'll pay triple." A stunned silence followed. But before Emily could react, chaos erupted. A black van screeched to a stop on the curb. The doors flew open, and in the blink of an eye, 3 masked men jumped out, armed, guns drawn, and they weren't here for Emily. They were here for Jason Statham. "Get down!" someone screamed. Emily's body moved before her mind caught up. She dove behind her art stand as the sound of a gunshot cracked through the air. People scattered, screams filling the streets. Jason? Where was Jason? She peeked through the gap between the crates and saw him, moving like a shadow, ducking, weaving, a human weapon in motion. One of the masked men lunged at him. A mistake. Jason sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted. A scream of pain. The gun clattered to the ground. In one fluid motion, Jason picked it up and, bang, another attacker dropped. But there was still one left. And he wasn't hesitating. He raised his weapon, aiming straight at Jason. Emily saw it before Jason did. She didn't think. She acted. With every ounce of strength she had left, she grabbed the nearest thing, her easel, and flung it forward. Crashed into the attacker, throwing him off balance just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet whizzed past Jason's ear, missing by inches. In a flash, Jason was on him, and within seconds, it was over. Sirens blared in the distance. Emily sat frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. Jason turned to her, his breathing heavy. "That was quick thinking," he said, his voice calmer than it had any right to be. Emily let out a shaky laugh. "I guess art saves lives in more ways than one." Jason smirked. Then he knelt, scooped up the fallen envelope of cash, and placed it firmly in her hands. "That," he said, "was for the art." Emily looked at the money, then back at him. "But, no but," he interrupted. "Take it, pay for your treatment, and when you get better, keep painting." She swallowed hard, emotions choking her words. Then, as if nothing had happened, Jason straightened, adjusted his jacket, and with a final nod, walked away, just as the police arrived. And Emily? She sat there, staring at the money, at her scattered artwork, at the chaos that had unfolded in a matter of seconds. She had started the day hoping to sell a single painting. She had ended it with her life changed forever. And the man who made it happen had disappeared into the streets of London, like a ghost. Or more accurately, like Jason Statham. Emily sat in stunned silence, her heart still pounding as the wail of police sirens filled the air. Officers rushed onto the scene, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. The three masked attackers lay on the pavement, two groaning in pain, one completely still. Jason Statham was nowhere to be seen. "Are you hurt?" A police officer knelt beside her, his voice urgent yet gentle. Emily shook her head, barely able to process what had just happened. She clutched the thick envelope Jason had given her, her fingers tightening around it as if it might disappear. "Miss, can you tell us what happened?" the officer asked, pulling out a notepad. Emily hesitated. She knew the basics of what had just gone down, but it had all happened so fast. Would anyone even believe her if she told them? But before she could answer, a hand grabbed her wrist. She gasped. It was one of the masked men. His grip was weak, his face contorted in pain, but his voice was chilling. "You have no idea what you've just gotten yourself into." Emily yanked her arm free, stumbling backward. The officer immediately pinned the man down, but his words echoed in her mind. What did he mean? What had she just stepped into? The next few hours were a blur. Police reports, paramedics checking her for injuries, witnesses giving statements, a detective questioning her about what she knew. And through it all, one thought kept racing through her mind. Jason Statham. Where had he gone? And what had those men wanted from him? 2 days later, Emily sat on the edge of her hospital bed, staring at the envelope Jason had given her. The money inside would cover her chemotherapy, maybe even more. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. But the questions still lingered. She had searched online, looking for any news about Jason Statham being attacked. Nothing. It was as if the entire incident had been wiped from existence. Then, a knock at her hospital room door. She turned, expecting a nurse. Instead, a man in a black suit stepped inside. His face was unreadable. His presence made the air feel heavier. "Emily Carter?" he asked. She nodded cautiously. The man took a step closer and placed something on the table beside her. A phone. It wasn't hers. The screen lit up. A text message appeared. "Come to the park. Alone. J.S." Her breath caught in her throat. Jason Statham. Why was he contacting her? And why did she feel like this was only the beginning? Emily's hands trembled as she stared at the message on the phone. "Come to the park. Alone. J.S." Her pulse quickened. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. Jason Statham had saved her life, bought her paintings, and then vanished. Now, 2 days later, someone in a black suit had just handed her a phone, with a direct message from him. She looked up at the man who had delivered it. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man didn't answer. He simply nodded at the phone and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. Emily swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed, this is dangerous. But another voice whispered something else. This is your only chance to find out the truth. She made her decision. Later that night, Emily sat on a park bench, her heart hammering as she scanned the dimly lit area. The city lights flickered in the distance, the soft murmur of passing cars filling the air. She had told no one where she was going. No police, no hospital staff. If this was a mistake, she was on her own. A figure appeared from the shadows. Jason. Even in the half-light, his presence was unmistakable. He moved with the controlled precision of someone who was always calculating his surroundings. "You actually came," he said, his voice low. "You told me to," she shot back. Jason smirked but didn't waste time with small talk. "You're in danger, Emily." Her stomach dropped. "From who?" Jason glanced around before speaking. "Those men in the van? They weren't just random criminals. They were after something." Emily frowned. "Something? Or someone?" Jason exhaled sharply. "Me." The pieces started clicking into place. "Why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Jason hesitated. Then, "Because I took something from them." Emily's mind raced. "Wait, so this was never about me? I just got caught in the crossfire." Jason's jaw tightened. "At first, yes. But now?" His eyes darkened. Now, they know your name. A chill ran down her spine. She thought back to the masked man's words at the crime scene. You have no idea what you've just gotten yourself into. What do they want from you? She asked. Jason looked at her, measuring his words. A package. Something I intercepted before it could reach its buyer. They want it back. Emily's mind reeled. Then give it back. Jason let out a humorless chuckle. Not that simple. Emily shook her head, still trying to process everything. Okay. So where's this package now? Jason hesitated. Then, you're sitting on it. Emily froze. She looked down at the park bench. Then carefully she reached underneath. Her fingers brushed against something. A small, hard object, taped to the underside. Her breath caught. She peeled it off and held it in her palm. A USB drive. Her eyes snapped back to Jason. This is what they're after. Jason nodded. And now that you have it, they'll be after you too. A rustling sound. Both of them turned. 3 men were approaching. Black suits. Cold eyes. No hesitation in their steps. Jason muttered a curse. Run. Emily didn't need to be told twice. She bolted. Behind her, she heard Jason move. Fast, powerful, colliding with the first man like a wrecking ball. A grunt, a struggle. But the other 2 were still coming. Emily clutched the USB tighter and sprinted through the park, her lungs burning. But no matter how fast she ran, footsteps were closing in. And then, a van skidded onto the curb in front of her. The door slid open. A hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. And just like that, she was gone. Emily's world spun as she was yanked into the van. The doors slammed shut. The smell of leather and cold metal filled her nose. A sharp light flicked on, blinding her. 3 men. Suits. Silent. One sat across from her. Legs spread. Hands resting on his knees. The leader. Emily's breath hitched, but she gritted her teeth. Fear wouldn't help her now. The leader's eyes dropped to her clenched fist. The drive, he said, voice smooth but firm. Emily's pulse thundered. Where's Jason? She shot back. A flicker of amusement in the man's expression. Not your concern. Her fingers curled tighter around the USB. You think I'll just give it to you? She challenged. The man exhaled, as if bored. Then he reached into his jacket. Emily braced herself. A weapon? A syringe? Instead, he pulled out a phone, turned the screen toward her. Her heart stopped. A live video feed. Jason Statham trapped. He was inside a dark room, seated, hands zip-tied behind his back. Bruised, breathing heavy, surrounded. Emily's stomach dropped. Give us the drive, the man repeated. And we let him live. Silence stretched between them. Her brain screamed at her to comply. Jason had saved her life twice. He had paid for her treatment. He didn't deserve this. But something about the leader's voice. It was too calm, too rehearsed. Jason was still alive because they needed leverage. The second they got the drive, he'd be disposable. Emily swallowed. Then she made her choice. She took a shaky breath. Okay. She held up the USB. The leader smiled. Good girl. He reached out, and Emily moved. With everything she had left, she threw the drive toward the farthest corner of the van. It bounced off the seat and rolled under it. The leader cursed. The moment of distraction was all she needed. Emily lunged. Her fingers curled around a metal water bottle lying on the seat. She swung it with full force. Crack. The leader recoiled, blood streaking from his temple. Emily didn't stop. She kicked the door. It didn't budge. The van was still moving, but she wasn't trapped yet. One of the other men reached for her. Jason's voice echoed in her mind. Quick thinking. Emily dropped low, grabbed the drive, and in one motion, shoved it into her mouth. The men froze. The leader's eyes burned. You wouldn't. Emily stared him down. Then, she swallowed. The van skidded. Chaos. Shouts. Hands grabbing her. But it was too late. The drive was inside her. You little. The van jerked to a stop. Then, the side door was ripped open. And standing there, bruised, furious, and alive, Jason Statham. The air exploded. Jason moved like a storm. Punch, a kick, a broken nose. The men barely had time to react before they were down. Emily gasped for breath. Jason yanked her out of the van. Can you run? He asked. She nodded. Then run. They bolted. Gunshots cracked behind them. The city streets blurred. They wove through alleys, dodging cars, pushing forward until they lost them. Finally, Jason pulled them into a shadowed doorway. Silence. Both of them panting. Jason turned to her, eyes blazing. Did you really just swallow a classified drive? Emily wiped her mouth. They weren't getting it. A beat of silence. Then Jason barked out a laugh. All right, he muttered. That's a new one. Emily smiled weakly. So what now? Jason exhaled, scanning the darkened street. Now, he said, we disappear. Emily's heart pounded. And after that? Jason looked at her. A smirk tugged at his lip. We raise hell. Fade to black. What would you have done if you were in Emily's situation? Would you have swallowed the USB? Or tried something else? And what do you think Jason and Emily will do next? Should they go into hiding or take the fight to their enemies? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this thrilling story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more action-packed stories like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. See you in the next one.